I was standing outside a coffee shop in Santa Fe, staring through the window at a man who'd been dead for 10 years. My husband, the man I'd buried, the man I'd mourned, except he wasn't dead. He was laughing, holding a little girl's hand, kissing a woman who wasn't me. And he looked happy. My name is Catherine Walsh, but everyone calls me Cat. I'm 58 years old now, though I feel ancient, like I've lived several lifetimes in this one body. For the past decade, I've been a widow, or at least I thought I was. It all started 10 years ago, on a Tuesday in March. I remember because Tuesdays were always our day. My husband James and we'd have breakfast together before he left for work, and we'd talk about everything and nothing. That Tuesday morning, he'd kissed me goodbye at the door of our townhouse in Evanston, Illinois, just outside Chicago, and said, "Love you, Cat. See you tonight." Those were the last words he ever said to me, or so I thought. James was a senior accountant at Brennan and Associates, a mid-sized firm in downtown Chicago. He traveled sometimes for work, audits and consultations for clients in other cities. That Tuesday, he was supposed to drive to Milwaukee for a meeting, return the same day, a simple day trip. He'd done it dozens of times before. At 4:30 that afternoon, I got the call. It was James's boss, Richard Brennan himself. His voice was shaking. "Cat, there's been an accident." "James, I'm so sorry." There was a car accident on I-94. A semi-truck crossed the median. James's car was hit head-on. The world stopped. Just stopped. Like someone had pressed pause on reality. "Is he okay?" I heard myself ask, even though I already knew. You always know. "Cat, I'm so sorry." He didn't survive. He was killed instantly. They said he didn't suffer. I don't remember much about the rest of that day. I remember dropping the phone. I remember my neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, hearing me scream and coming over. I remember calling my sister Beth, who lived 2 hours away in Indianapolis. I remember nothing and everything all at once. The funeral was a week later, closed casket. Richard Brennan explained that the accident had been so severe, so devastating, that it wouldn't be appropriate for an open casket service. I'd insisted on seeing him one last time, but Richard had gently discouraged it. "Cat, trust me, you don't want to remember him that way. Remember him how he was, happy, alive. Don't let your last image of James be..." He didn't finish, but I understood, or I thought I did. So I buried my husband in a closed casket at Rose Hill Cemetery on a cold, rainy March afternoon. I stood under a black umbrella and watched them lower him into the ground. I threw a white rose onto the casket. I said goodbye to the man I'd loved for 22 years. Except I didn't, because he wasn't in that casket, but I didn't know that then. For 10 years I didn't know. Those first months after James died were the darkest of my life. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, reaching for him, forgetting for just a moment that he was gone, and then the reality would crash over me again, drowning me. The life insurance money came through, $500,000. It seemed obscene to profit from James's death, but my sister convinced me to accept it. "It's what he would have wanted, Cat. He made sure you'd be taken care of." I quit my job as a librarian. I couldn't focus, couldn't be around people. I stayed in the townhouse for a while, but everywhere I looked I saw James, his coffee cup, his reading chair, his jacket still hanging in the closet because I couldn't bear to give away his clothes. Eventually, my sister convinced me to sell the townhouse and move closer to her in Indianapolis. Fresh start, new city, away from all the memories. So I did. I bought a small condo, tried to build a new life. I went to therapy. Dr. Morrison was kind and patient as I worked through my grief. "It takes time," she kept saying. "There's no timeline for healing. Be gentle with yourself." I joined a grief support group, sat in a circle with other widows and widowers, all of us broken in the same way. all of us trying to figure out how to keep living when the person we loved most was gone. Slowly, painfully, I started to heal, or at least I started to function. I got a part-time job at a bookstore. I made a few friends. I learned to cook for one. I stopped setting two places at the table. On Sundays, I'd drive the 2 hours back to Evanston to visit James's grave. I'd bring fresh flowers, usually white roses because those were his favorite. I'd sit on the grass and talk to him, tell him about my week, about the books I was reading, about how much I missed him. Year after year after year, I mourned, I grieved, I slowly, incrementally, learned to live without him, until last month, when my whole world shattered again. It started with my friend Susan from the bookstore. We'd become close over the past few years, close enough that she worried about me, about how I never dated, never even seemed interested in meeting anyone. "Kat, it's been 10 years, she said one day over coffee. Don't you think James would want you to be happy, to live again?" "I am living," I said, but we both knew it was a lie. I was existing, going through the motions, but I wasn't really living. "Take a vacation," Susan suggested. "Get out of Indianapolis, see somewhere new. I know a great little hotel in Santa Fe, the desert, the art scene, the culture. It might do you good." I'd never been to New Mexico. James and I had always talked about going out west, but we'd never gotten around to it. Maybe Susan was right. Maybe I needed to break out of my routine, see new places, try to find some joy again. So I booked a week in Santa Fe for early October, a small hotel in the historic district, walking distance to the plaza and the galleries. My therapist thought it was a good idea. My sister thought it was a good idea. Everyone seemed to think I needed this trip. I flew into Albuquerque, rented a car, and drove the hour north to Santa Fe. The landscape was stunning, all red rocks and endless sky, so different from the flat Midwest I'd known my whole life. The hotel was charming, a renovated adobe building with turquoise doors and a courtyard fountain. For the first few days, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wandered through art galleries and museums. I ate at local restaurants, trying green chili on everything. I hiked in the foothills, breathing in the clean desert air. I even thought, just for a moment, that maybe I could be happy again. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Then came Thursday morning, October 12th, a date I'll never forget. I'd slept well for the first time in months and woke up feeling energized. I decided to walk downtown, maybe get breakfast at one of the cafes near the plaza. It was a beautiful morning, crisp and clear, the kind of morning that makes you grateful to be alive. I was walking down Palace Avenue, admiring the galleries, when I passed a coffee shop called The Daily Grind. It was busy, people sitting at outdoor tables, the smell of espresso and fresh pastries in the air. I glanced through the window as I walked by, just a casual glance, and my heart stopped. There, sitting at a table in the back corner, was my husband, James, my James. But it couldn't be. He was dead. I'd buried him. I'd spent 10 years mourning him. Yet there he was, older, his hair more gray than brown now, a few more lines on his face, but unmistakably him. Those same blue eyes, that same smile, that same way he tilted his head when he laughed. He was laughing now, talking to a woman across from him. She was younger than me, maybe early 40s, with long dark hair and a warm smile, and holding his hand was a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with curly brown hair, and his eyes, his unmistakable blue eyes. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, people flowing around me like I was a stone in a river. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing, couldn't make sense of it. It's not him. It can't be him. You're having a breakdown. You're hallucinating. But he was real, solid, physical. He lifted a coffee cup to his lips. He ruffled the little girl's hair. He leaned across the table and kissed the woman. My legs moved without my permission, carrying me closer to the window. I pressed my hand against the glass, staring, trying to convince my brain that this wasn't happening. And then he looked up. Our eyes met through the window. For a moment, just a split second, his face went completely white. His coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. His eyes went wide with recognition, with shock, with something that looked almost like fear. He knew me, he recognized me, which meant I wasn't hallucinating. This was real. Then, just as quickly, his expression shifted. He looked away, said something to the woman, stood up abruptly. The woman looked confused. The little girl looked worried. James grabbed the woman's hand, pulled her toward the back of the cafe, away from the window, away from me. He was running. He was running from me. I don't remember consciously deciding to go inside, but suddenly, I was pushing through the door, the bell chiming cheerfully above my head, completely at odds with the chaos in my mind. "James," I called out, my voice hoarse and strange. "James Walsh." People turned to look at me. The barista frowned, but James didn't turn around. He was pushing through the back door marked "Employees Only," dragging the woman and the little girl with him. I tried to follow, but a young barista blocked my way. "Ma'am, that's a private area. You can't go back there." "That man, the man who just left. I need to talk to him. I'm sorry, but he's gone. Is there something I can help you with?" I stared at her, this young woman with purple streaks in her hair and a name tag that said Riley, and I realized how insane I must sound. No, I'm sorry." I stumbled back outside, looking around wildly. The back door of the cafe opened onto an alley. I ran to the alley, looked both ways. Empty. They were gone. I stood there in that alley, breathing hard, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. My hands were shaking. My vision was blurring with tears I couldn't control. It was him. I knew it was him. But how? How could it be him? I spent the rest of that day in a daze. I went back to my hotel, locked myself in my room, and stared at the ceiling. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what I'd seen, trying to find a rational explanation. Maybe it was someone who looked like James, a doppelganger. It happens, right? Everyone has a twin somewhere in the world. But he'd recognized me. I'd seen it in his eyes. That split second of pure shock before he ran. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe grief had finally broken something in my brain, and I was seeing things that weren't there. But it had felt so real. He'd looked so real. I called my sister Beth. She answered on the second ring. "Kat, how's Santa Fe? Are you having a good time?" "Beth." My voice cracked. "Beth, I think I saw James." Silence. Then, carefully, "Kat, what do you mean?" "I saw him, in a coffee shop, with a woman and a little girl. It was him, Beth. I know it was him. Kat, honey, James is dead. He's been dead for 10 years. You buried him, remember? Maybe you saw someone who looked like him, but he recognized me." I was crying now, hard, ugly sobs. He looked at me and he knew who I was. And then he ran. Why would he run if it wasn't him? "Kat, listen to me. You're having a grief episode. It happened. The stress of the vacation, being in a new place. Your mind is playing tricks on you. I think you should come home. I'll book you a flight tonight. I'm not imagining this. I know you think you're not. But Kat, think about it. Really think about it. James is dead. You saw his death certificate. You went to his funeral. There was a whole investigation by the insurance company before they paid out. If James was alive, don't you think someone would have noticed?" She was right. Of course she was right. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. "Maybe you're right," I said quietly. "Maybe I'm just tired. Come home, Kat. Please, let me take care of you." But I didn't go home. I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I knew for sure. The next morning, I went back to the daily grind. I sat outside with a coffee I didn't drink, watching the door, waiting. Hours passed. He didn't come. I went back the next day, and the next. On the third day, I finally worked up the courage to go inside and talk to the barista with the purple hair. "Hi, Riley," I said, reading her name tag again. "I need to ask you about someone. The man who was here Thursday morning, the one with the woman and the little girl. Do you know them? Are they regulars?" Riley looked at me suspiciously. "Why are you asking?" I think I might know him from a long time ago. I just want to make sure." She studied me for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. "Yeah, they come in a few times a week. Nice family. He's always ordering the same thing, black coffee and a blueberry muffin. The little girl gets hot chocolate. Do you know his name? Tom, I think? Or maybe Tim. I'm not great with names. Not James. But that didn't mean anything. He could have changed his name. Does he live around here? I don't know, lady. Look, I'm not supposed to give out information about customers. If you want to talk to him, you'll have to wait until he comes in again." "When does he usually come in?" She shrugged. "Usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, around 9 in the morning, but I can't promise anything." Tuesday. 4 more days. I spent those 4 days barely functioning. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that moment in my mind, seeing his face, the way he'd looked at me, the fear in his eyes. My therapist back in Indianapolis called to check in. "Kat, your sister is worried about you. She said you thought you saw James." I did see Kat. We've talked about this. Grief can manifest in strange ways. The mind can play tricks, especially when we're stressed or in unfamiliar environments. "I'm not crazy. I didn't say you were, but I think you should come home. Being in Santa Fe alone isn't good for you right now." But I couldn't leave, not until I knew. Tuesday morning came. I was at the daily grind before they opened, sitting at an outdoor table, watching the door. 9 o'clock came and went, then 9:30, then 10. He didn't come. Maybe he knew I was looking for him. Maybe he was avoiding this place now. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing and was losing my mind. I was about to give up when I saw them, not at the coffee shop, but across the street, walking down the sidewalk. James, the woman, and the little girl. They were holding hands, laughing about something. I stood up so fast I knocked over my chair. They didn't notice. They turned a corner, heading toward the plaza. I followed them. I know how it sounds. I know I was acting like a stalker, like a crazy person, but I had to know. I had to understand. They walked through the plaza, stopped to look at some Native American jewelry laid out by vendors, bought the little girl an ice cream cone. They looked like a normal family, a happy family. They ended up at a small park, where the little girl ran to the playground. James and the woman sat on a bench, watching her. I stood behind a tree maybe 30 feet away, partially hidden, watching them. The woman said something that made James laugh. He put his arm around her, kissed the top of her head. The gesture was so familiar, so intimate. It was the same way he used to kiss me. The little girl ran over, breathless and happy. "Daddy, watch me on the swings." Daddy, the word hit me like a physical blow. He had a daughter, a whole child I didn't know about. James walked over to push her on the swing. I could hear the little girl's laughter, high and pure. Could hear James counting. 1, 2, 3, push. It was too much. I couldn't breathe. I turned and walked away quickly, back toward my hotel, tears streaming down my face. Back in my room, I pulled out my laptop and started researching. If James was alive and living in Santa Fe, there had to be a record, a paper trail. I searched for James Walsh, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Nothing relevant came up. I tried James Walsh, accountant, Santa Fe. Still nothing. Then I remembered what the barista said. Tom, or Tim. I tried Thomas Walsh, Santa Fe. Pages of results. None of them him. I was about to give up when I had another thought. What if he'd changed his last name too? I searched for facial recognition software, ways to find someone from a photo. I had dozens of photos of James on my phone, pictures I'd transferred from our old albums, pictures I looked at sometimes when I was missing him too much. There were websites where you could upload a photo and it would search social media, public records, anywhere that photo might appear online. I uploaded James's photo to one of these sites and hit search. It took 3 hours of going through false matches before I found him. A Facebook profile with limited privacy settings. The profile picture was him. Older, but definitely him, smiling at the camera. The name on the profile, Thomas Rivera. Tom. That's why the barista couldn't remember. And Rivera. He'd taken his new wife's last name. Or maybe it was a completely made-up name. Either way, James Walsh was now Thomas Rivera. His profile didn't have much public information, but there was enough. He worked as an accountant at a small firm in Santa Fe. He'd been living in New Mexico for 9 years. 9 years, not 10. He'd disappeared 10 years ago in that accident in Chicago, and he'd shown up in Santa Fe a year later with a new name, a new life. The woman's name was Maria Rivera. Her profile was more public. I scrolled through her photos, each one a knife to my heart. Pictures of their wedding 5 years ago. Pictures of the little girl, whose name was Sophia, at various ages. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations, a whole life, a whole family. While I was grieving, he was building a new life with someone else. I felt sick, physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. When I could finally stand again, I sat on the cold tile floor and tried to think, tried to understand. Why would James fake his death? Why would he leave me? We'd been happy, hadn't we? 22 years of marriage. We'd had our problems, sure. Every couple does. But nothing that would warrant this. Nothing that would make him want to disappear. Unless I'd been wrong. Unless we hadn't been happy. And I just hadn't seen it. The questions spiraled in my mind, making me dizzy. But underneath all the confusion and hurt, a cold anger was starting to build. He'd let me think he was dead. Let me grieve for him. Let me bury an empty casket. Let me spend 10 years of my life mourning someone who was alive and well, and playing happy family in New Mexico. And the life insurance, $500,000 paid out because James Walsh was declared dead. That was fraud. That was a crime. I picked myself up off the bathroom floor, washed my face, and made a decision. I was going to confront him. Not in public, not where he could run. I was going to his house. Maria Rivera's Facebook profile listed her workplace. She was a nurse at Christus St. Vincent Hospital. Her schedule was probably pretty regular. If I watched their house, I could catch James alone. The address was listed on one of those people finder websites. 342 Calle Loma, a residential street in the hills outside Santa Fe. The next morning I rented a different car, something less noticeable than the red sedan I'd been driving. I found their house, a modest adobe-style home with a well-maintained yard and 2 cars in the driveway. I parked down the street and waited. At 7:30 a.m., Maria came out in scrubs, kissed James goodbye at the door, and drove off in a blue Honda. Sophia must have already been at school. I waited another 15 minutes to make sure Maria wasn't coming back. Then I got out of my car and walked up to the front door. My hand was shaking as I rang the doorbell. Footsteps inside. The door opened. James stood there in jeans and a t-shirt, coffee mug in hand, and the color drained from his face. "Hello, James," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Or should I call you Thomas now?" He tried to close the door. I stuck my foot in the jamb. "We need to talk. I don't know who you think I am, but don't." My voice was sharp. "Don't insult me by pretending you don't know me." I saw the recognition in your eyes at the coffee shop. "I know who you are, James, and you know exactly who I am." He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched the calculation happening behind his eyes. Fight or flight, deny or admit. Finally, his shoulders sagged. Kat. Jesus Christ, Kat. Can I come in, or are we going to have this conversation on your doorstep? He stepped aside. Let me in. The house was cozy, filled with family photos and kids' artwork on the refrigerator, evidence of the life he'd built without me. We stood in the living room, facing each other like strangers. In many ways, we were strangers now. How did you find me? He asked. Does it matter? I found you. That's what matters. Kat, I can explain. Can you explain how you're alive when I buried you 10 years ago? Can you explain how you let me grieve for you while you were here living your best life? Can you explain any of this? My voice was rising, getting louder with each question. All the pain and confusion and rage of the past week was coming out. James ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt. It's complicated, then uncomplicated. You owe me that much. He sank onto the couch, looking defeated. I didn't plan for it to go this way. You have to believe that. I don't have to believe anything. Start talking. He took a deep breath. 10 years ago, I was in trouble. Big trouble. I'd been gambling, Kat. For years. Sports betting, poker, online casinos. I couldn't stop. I'd lost everything. I'd taken money from the firm, falsified records. To cover it up, I was about to be caught, about to be arrested. I would have gone to prison for 20 years. I felt like I was hearing this from underwater. The words distorted and unreal. That trip to Milwaukee, he continued. It wasn't for a client. It was to meet with some people who could help me disappear. They faked the accident, faked my death. There was a body in that casket, Kat, just not mine. Someone else. Someone whose family had agreed to let their loved one's body be used. The dental records were falsified. The death certificate was forged. Richard Brennan was in on it. He helped arrange everything because if I was arrested, it would have destroyed the firm. You let me bury a stranger. I didn't have a choice. You had a choice. I was shouting now, tears streaming down my face. You could have told me the truth. You could have let me help you. Instead, you let me think you were dead. If I'd told you, you would have been complicit. You would have been guilty too. I was protecting you. Protecting me? You destroyed me. Do you have any idea what the last 10 years have been like? The grief, the pain, the emptiness? I wanted to die, James. There were nights I thought about just ending it, because the pain was too much. His face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Kat. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. You did hurt me, in the worst possible way. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked the question I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to. Did you ever love me? Or was our entire marriage a lie? I loved you. I still love you in my own way. But Kat, we weren't happy. Not really. Not for a long time. We were just going through the motions. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time we really talked? Really connected? We were roommates, Kat. Not partners. Not anymore. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd been so comfortable, so complacent, that I hadn't seen the distance growing between us. But that didn't excuse what he'd done. And her, Maria? When did you meet her? A year after I came here. She's a good person, Kat. She doesn't know any of this. She thinks I'm Thomas Rivera, a widower whose wife died in a car accident back east. She doesn't know about you, about Chicago, about any of it. So you lied to her too. I had to. I'm trying to build a life here, a good life. Sophia doesn't deserve to have her world destroyed because of my mistakes. And I deserve to have mine destroyed? He had no answer for that. The insurance money, I said. $500,000. That's fraud. That's a federal crime. I know. I could turn you in. Right now, I could call the police and tell them everything. He met my eyes. I know. That's your choice, Kat. I can't stop you. But if you do, you'll be destroying more than just me. You'll be destroying Maria and Sophia and the life they've built. Sophia's innocent in all this. She's just a little girl. I was innocent too, and you destroyed my life anyway. My phone was in my hand. I could call the police right now. End this. Get justice. Watch him be arrested for insurance fraud and identity fraud. And God knows what else. But he was right about one thing. Sophia was innocent. That little girl with his blue eyes and her mother's smile hadn't done anything wrong. Did she deserve to lose her father? To watch him be arrested? To learn that everything she knew about him was a lie? I need time to think, I said finally. Kat, don't talk to me right now. I can't think when you're talking. I left his house and drove back to my hotel in a daze. Once in my room, I collapsed on the bed and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. What was I going to do? I called my sister, told her everything. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Oh my God, Kat. Oh my God, I don't know what to do, Beth. Part of me wants to call the police immediately, but there's a child involved. Yeah. What does your gut tell you? My gut says I'm angrier than I've ever been in my life. My gut says he deserves to be punished for what he did. But my gut also says that punishing him means punishing an innocent little girl. This isn't fair to you, Kat. It's not fair that you have to make this choice. None of this is fair. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Sophia, about how her whole world would collapse if I made that phone call. I thought about Maria, who'd married a man she thought was a widower, who had no idea she was living with someone else's husband. Should I tell her? Did she deserve to know the truth? By morning, I'd made a decision. I drove back to James's house. This time, I'd made sure Maria was working and Sophia was at school. I needed to talk to him alone one more time. He opened the door warily. Kat, I'm not calling the police, I said. Not yet, but I have conditions. He looked wary. What conditions? First, you're going to tell me everything, every detail, why you gambled, how much you lost, how you faked your death, who helped you, all of it. I deserve the truth. He nodded slowly. Okay. Second, the insurance money. You're going to pay it back. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care if it means you work a second job for the next 20 years. That money was paid out because you were declared dead, and you're not dead, so you're going to pay it back. Kat, I don't have that kind of money. Then figure it out, because option B is I call the police right now. Your choice. He swallowed hard. Okay, I'll figure it out. Third, you're going to leave Maria and Sophia alone. Don't tell Maria about me. Don't destroy her life the way you destroyed mine. That little girl deserves a stable home. And if you say one word to Maria about this, I will call the police. Do you understand? You want me to keep lying to her? I want you to not punish her for your mistakes. She didn't do anything wrong, just like I didn't do anything wrong. But I was punished anyway. He nodded again. Okay, anything else? Yes, I never want to see you again. Never. I'm going to go back to Indianapolis. And I'm going to try to rebuild my life for the second time. And you're going to stay here and live with what you've done. Maybe someday you'll tell Maria the truth. Maybe you won't. That's between you and whatever conscience you have left. But I'm done. We're done. James Walsh is dead. He died 10 years ago. And Thomas Rivera is a stranger I'm never going to see again. Kat, I really am sorry for everything. I don't care. I turned and walked away, got in my car, and drove back to my hotel without looking back. 2 days later, I flew home to Indianapolis. It's been 3 months now since Santa Fe. 3 months since I discovered my dead husband was alive and living with another family. 3 months of therapy, of processing, of trying to figure out how to move forward. My therapist, Dr. Morrison, has been invaluable. You've experienced 2 major traumas, she said. First, the loss of your husband. Then, the discovery that that loss was a lie. You're grieving twice, Kat. Once for the man you thought you lost, and once for the truth of who he actually was. She's right. In some ways this is worse than when I thought he was dead, because at least when he was dead, I could remember him with love. Now, every memory is tainted. Every happy moment we shared is undercut by the knowledge that he was lying to me, gambling away our money, planning his escape. Was any of it real? Did he ever really love me? I'll never know. I haven't called the police. I think about it sometimes, especially on the bad days when the anger is overwhelming. But I think about Sophia and I don't make the call. Instead, I focus on healing, on genuinely healing this time, not just going through the motions the way I did for the past 10 years. I'm in therapy twice a week now. I've started painting again, something I used to love, but gave up years ago. I joined a hiking group. I'm learning to play the piano. I'm learning to live, really live, not just exist. And I'm angry. God, I'm angry. Some days the anger is a fire that burns so hot I can barely breathe. Other days, it's a cold, settled thing, heavy but manageable. But I'm also starting to realize something. James did destroy my life 10 years ago, but he also freed me in a strange, twisted way. I spent 10 years mourning a man who didn't deserve my grief. Now I get to spend however many years I have left, living for myself. Last week, a man asked me out, Harold, from my hiking group. He's kind and funny and patient. I said yes. I don't know if it will go anywhere. I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm trying. That's more than I've done in 10 years. And every Sunday I don't visit James's grave anymore, because there's no one there. There never was. Instead, I'm learning to visit places that bring me joy. Art museums, coffee shops where no one knows my story, mountain trails, where the only sound is wind and birdsong. I'm learning that grief isn't always about death. Sometimes it's about betrayal. Sometimes it's about realizing that the life you thought you had never really existed. But I'm also learning that survival isn't just about making it through. It's about deciding every single day to keep going even when everything in you wants to give up. James took 10 years from me. He took my trust, my peace, my sense of safety in the world. But he didn't take everything. I'm still here. I'm still standing. And that has to count for something. My sister Beth calls me every day. How are you doing? Really? She always asks. Some days are better than others. I tell her, but I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. And I mean it. For the first time in 10 years. Maybe for the first time since that Thursday morning in Santa Fe. I actually mean it. 3 months after my return from New Mexico, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived at my condo, forwarded from my old address in Evanston. The return address was from a law firm in Chicago, Goldman and Associates. I opened it with trembling hands. Dear Mrs. Walsh, my name is Martin Goldman, and I represent several former clients of Brennan and Associates. I am writing to inform you that Richard Brennan was recently arrested on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. During the investigation, information came to light regarding your late husband, James Walsh. I would like to speak with you about this matter at your earliest convenience. Please contact my office to schedule a meeting. My heart was pounding as I dialed the number at the bottom of the letter. Martin Goldman had a kind voice, but his words were devastating. Miss Walsh, I'm going to be direct with you. We've uncovered evidence that your husband's death was faked with Richard Brennan's assistant. Multiple people have been arrested, including 2 medical examiners who falsified records, a funeral director who was complicit in the scheme, and several employees at the insurance company who processed the claim. I know, I said quietly. I know he's alive. There was a pause. You know, I found him 3 months ago in New Mexico, living under a different name with a new family. Mrs. Walsh, why didn't you report this? I closed my eyes. Because he has a daughter, an innocent little girl, who doesn't deserve to have her father ripped away because of his crime. I know it was wrong. I know I should have called the police, but I couldn't do it. Mrs. Walsh, I understand your compassion, but you need to understand something. James Walsh isn't the only victim of this scheme. There were 5 other deaths that Richard Brennan helped fake. 5 other families who collected life insurance on people who are still alive. This is a massive fraud operation, And your husband was one of the key players. My stomach turned. 5 other people? Yes. And the insurance companies want their money back. They're going to pursue this criminally. Mrs. Walsh, I need you to come to Chicago. I need you to tell the FBI everything you know. The FBI? This is federal fraud, Mrs. Walsh. Wire fraud, mail fraud, identity fraud. The penalties are severe, but if you cooperate fully, if you provide testimony, you won't be charged as an accessory. You're a victim here, not a criminal. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a conference room in downtown Chicago with 3 FBI agents, 2 attorneys, and a stenographer. I told them everything. The coffee shop in Santa Fe, following James, the confrontation at his house, his confession about the gambling debts, the deal we'd made. The lead FBI agent, a woman named Sarah Chen, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, Mrs. Walsh, I appreciate your honesty. I know this hasn't been easy, but I need you to understand that your husband is going to be arrested. There's no way around that. The evidence against him is overwhelming. What about his daughter? Sophia? Social services will be involved. If her mother, Maria Rivera, wasn't aware of the fraud, she'll likely retain custody. But James Walsh, or Thomas Rivera, as he's calling himself, is going to prison. There's no avoiding that. How long? Given the scale of the fraud and the number of conspirators involved, he's looking at 20 years minimum, possibly more. I should have felt satisfaction, justice, victory. Instead, I just felt tired. What do you need from me? We need you to testify before a grand jury. And eventually, at trial, you're one of the key witnesses who can establish the timeline and the impact of the fraud. I agreed. What choice did I have? 6 months later, I was back in Chicago, sitting in a federal courthouse, waiting to testify. James had been extradited from New Mexico 2 months earlier. He'd been arrested at his home in front of Maria and Sophia. I'd seen the news coverage. Maria's face, shocked and betrayed, being escorted to a police car for questioning. Sophia crying, being led away by a social worker. The footage had made me sick. In the hallway outside the courtroom, I saw Maria for the first time in person. She was sitting on a bench, looking small and lost. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed. You're her, she said. You're Catherine Walsh. Yes, you knew. You knew he was lying to me, and you didn't say anything. I was trying to protect your daughter. Protect her. Maria's voice rose. You destroyed her. She watched her father get arrested. She's in therapy 5 days a week because she has nightmares. She keeps asking me when Daddy's coming home, and I have to tell her never. Never. Because he's a criminal and a liar, and everything we thought we knew about him was fake. Tears were streaming down her face. I loved him. I trusted him. We built a life together, and you let me keep living that lie. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. You could have told me the truth. I could have left him. I could have protected Sophia before she had to see him dragged out of our house in handcuffs. She was right. I'd made the wrong choice. In trying to protect Sophia, I'd actually made everything worse. You're right, I said quietly. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Maria wiped her eyes. He destroyed both of us, didn't he? You and me, 2 women who loved him. And he destroyed us both. Yeah, he did. We sat in silence for a moment, 2 women connected by our shared betrayal. What are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know. Try to help Sophia heal. Probably move back to Albuquerque where my family is. Start over, I guess. What about you? Same. Start over. Again. Does it get easier? The starting over? I don't know yet. I'll let you know if it does. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified for 2 days, walking the jury through everything. The fake death, the insurance fraud, finding James in Santa Fe, his confession. James's attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, as an ex-wife, seeking revenge. But the evidence was too overwhelming. The falsified records, the fake death certificate, the insurance payout, the new identity in New Mexico. Richard Brennan testified as part of a plea deal, explaining in detail how the scheme worked, how James had come to him desperate, drowning in gambling debt, facing criminal charges, how Richard had seen an opportunity to protect the firm by making James disappear. "I thought I was helping him," Richard said from the witness stand. "I didn't think about the cost, about his wife, about the insurance companies, about all the people we were hurting. I just thought about protecting my business." The other 4 men who'd faked their deaths told similar stories: debt, desperation, and someone offering them a way out that seemed too good to be true. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. Guilty on all counts, James was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Richard Brennan got 50. The medical examiners, the funeral director, and the insurance employees all received various sentences. After the sentencing, James's attorney asked if I wanted to speak to him one last time. I thought about it for a long time. Finally, I said yes. They brought him into a small conference room. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked older, defeated, nothing like the confident man I'd married, or even the panicked man I'd confronted in Santa Fe. We sat across from each other at a metal table. A guard stood by the door. "Kat," James said, "I'm so sorry for everything. I know that doesn't mean much now. But I need you to know. Why did you do it, really? Was it just the gambling?" He was quiet for a long time. I think I felt trapped in my life, in our marriage, in the person I was supposed to be. Gambling was a way to feel alive, to feel something other than the crushing weight of responsibility and routine. And when it all came crashing down, faking my death seemed like the only way out. You could have just asked for a divorce, I know, but I was a coward. I'm still a coward. What about Maria and Sophia? Did you love them? I did, I do. But I loved them as Thomas Rivera, not as James Walsh. Thomas was the person I wanted to be. James was the person I was running from. And who are you now? He looked down at his cuffed hands. I don't know. Neither, maybe. But a fraud, I guess. You hurt so many people, James. Me, Maria, Sophia, all those other families. Was it worth it? Those 9 years of freedom? No. God, no. If I could go back and do it differently. But you can't. None of us can. We sat in silence for a moment. What are you going to do now? He asked. After all this? Live. Really live this time. Not just exist. Not just go through the motions. Actually live. I'm glad. You deserve that, Kat. You deserved better than me. Yeah, I did. I stood up to leave. Kat, his voice stopped me at the door. Do you think someday you might forgive me? I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know, James. Maybe someday, but not today, not for a long time. I left without looking back. That was 2 years ago. James is in federal prison in Colorado. I hear he's been a model prisoner, teaching GED classes to other inmates, working in the library. I don't know if he's truly changed, or if he's just playing another role, being the person the parole board will want to see someday. Maria moved back to Albuquerque with Sophia. She sends me a Christmas card every year with a photo of Sophia. The little girl is getting bigger, her smile getting brighter. Maria started a blog about healing from betrayal. She's helping other women who've discovered their partners weren't who they claimed to be. We're not friends. Exactly. Too much pain between us. But we're connected. 2 survivors of the same disaster. Beth convinced me to move to Indianapolis permanently, to sell the condo and buy a small house closer to her. I did. It's a cozy craftsman bungalow, with a front porch, and a garden I'm slowly bringing back to life. I'm still seeing Dr. Morrison, probably will be for a long time. Trauma doesn't just disappear because you want it to. It has to be processed, worked through, integrated into your story. You're not a victim anymore, Kat, Dr. Morrison told me recently. You're a survivor. There's a difference. What's the difference? A victim is defined by what happened to them. A survivor is defined by how they move forward. I'm trying to move forward. Some days are harder than others. Some days the anger and betrayal feel as fresh as they did in that coffee shop in Santa Fe. Other days I go hours without thinking about James at all. I'm still seeing Harold from the hiking group. It's been slow, careful, both of us damaged in our own ways. His wife left him for another man 5 years ago, so he understands betrayal. We're taking our time, building trust slowly. Last week he asked me to go on a trip with him to the Grand Canyon. I said yes. I'm trying new things. I took a pottery class and discovered I'm terrible at it, but I enjoy it anyway. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping other survivors of various traumas. I joined a book club and a choir. I'm building a life, a real life this time, not a performance or a lie, or a going through the motions existence, a life that's entirely mine. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not calling the police immediately when I found James in Santa Fe, if I regret making that deal with him, trying to protect Sophia. The truth is, I don't know. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was trying to protect an innocent child from being hurt by her father's crime. But in the end she was hurt anyway. Maybe even more than if I'd just turned him in immediately. I'll never know if I made the right choice. All I know is that I made the choice I could live with at the time, based on the information I had, and the person I was. And I'm learning that that's okay. We're all just doing our best with the information we have. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. The important thing is to keep going. Last Sunday, I drove to Rose Hill Cemetery in Chicago. I stood in front of the grave, marked James Richard Walsh, beloved husband. The grave where I'd left flowers every week for years. The grave that holds a stranger's body. I stood there for a long time, thinking about the woman I was when I buried him. The woman who thought she'd lost the love of her life. The woman who was so consumed by grief she could barely function. I'm not that woman anymore. I forgive you, I said to the headstone. Not because James deserves forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. Then I turned and walked away. This time, I didn't leave flowers. I went home to my little house in Indianapolis. Harold was waiting on the porch with Tide takeout and a bottle of wine. We ate dinner and talked about the upcoming trip to the Grand Canyon. After dinner we sat on the porch swing and watched the sunset. He reached over and took my hand, and I let him. I'm learning to trust again, slowly, carefully, but I'm learning. You seem happy, Harold said. I think I am, I replied, or at least, I'm learning how to be. That's good enough for now. And he's right, it is good enough for now. My name is Catherine Walsh. I'm 60 years. 10 years ago, my husband faked his death and disappeared, leaving me to grieve a lie. 2 years ago, I found him alive and living with another family. It destroyed me, then it freed me. I spent a decade mourning a man who wasn't dead. Now I get to spend the rest of my life actually living instead of just surviving. James took 10 years from me, but I'm not going to let him take one more day, because the best revenge isn't calling the police or seeing him sent to prison, though that happened anyway. The best revenge is living well, being happy, proving that I didn't need him to have a full, meaningful, joyful life. I thought my story ended when James died. Then I thought it ended when I discovered he was alive. But I was wrong both times. My story didn't end. It just had a plot twist I never saw coming. And now I'm writing the next chapter. And this time, I'm the only author.